everyone, and welcome back to another video on Rainbow Magic Book Club. Today, I'm going to be reading some of Scarlett the Garnet Fairy. She is so pretty. Rainbow Magic, the Jewels Fairies. Scarlett the Garnet Fairy can't make things grow and shrink without her magic jewel. When Rachel and Kirsty find some tiny sheep, they think that the garnets must be nearby. So I'm not going to be reading the map or Jack Frost spell because I already did that with India the Moonstone Fairy. But there is the map and Jack Frost spell. I walk on the farm. Wakey Wakey, Rachel Walker called, bouncing on the end of her friend Kirsty's bed. Kirsty Tate was staying with the Walker family for the October half-term holiday, and Rachel didn't want to waste a single second. Kirsty yawned and stretched. I just had the most amazing dream, she said sleepily. That must mean that everything is fine because the moonstone has been found. Queen Titania asked us to help the Jewel Fairies find 7 stolen gemstones from her magic tiara, and her voice trailed as she opened her eyes wide. It wasn't a dream, was it? She said, sitting bolt upright. We really did meet India the Moonstone Fairy yesterday. Rachel nodded, smiling. We certainly did, she agreed. Kirsty and Rachel shared a wonderful secret. They were friends with the fairies. They had all sorts of fantastic adventures with them in the past, and now the fairies were in trouble. Mean Jack Frost had stolen the 7 magical jewels from the Fairy Queen's tiara. He had wanted to keep the jewels for himself, but the magic was so powerful that his ice castle had begun to melt. In a rage, Jack Frost had hurled the jewels away, and now they were lost. King Oberon and Queen Titania had asked the girls to help return the jewels to Fairyland. Yesterday, Kirsty and Rachel had helped India the Moonstone Fairy find the magic moonstone, but there were still 6 jewels left to find. I'm glad the moonstone is safely back in Fairyland, Rachel said, and I had a lovely dream last night, so we know for sure that India's dream magic is working properly again now. The Fairy King and Queen had told the girls that the jewels from the Queen Titania's crown controlled some of the most important kinds of fairy magic. Every year, in a special ceremony, the fairies would replenish the magic by dipping their wands in the magic fountain that streamed from the tiara. But Jack Frost had stolen the jewels just before this year's ceremony could take place, and that meant all the fairies were running low on much of the special fairy magic. We've just got to find the other jewels before the fairies' magic is gone, Kirsty said, getting dressed quickly. Perhaps we'll discover another jewel today. Rachel agreed eagerly, and together the girls hurried downstairs for breakfast. Unfortunately, it drizzled all morning, and there was no sign of any jewels or the Jewel Fairies. To be honest, it was actually raining today, so it's cool that it's raining in this story. After lunch, though the clouds cleared away to reveal a blue sky and sunshine. Who wants to come with me to Buttercup Farm? Mrs. Walker asked, clearing away the lunch things. That's a nice name for cereal. Breakfast bites, or bite. Anyway. We need some vegetables and eggs for tea. And you two look like you need some fresh air. We do, Rachel agreed, grinning at Kirsty. She held up crossed fingers while her mum wasn't looking. Crossed fingers. We might come across a jewel, she added in a whisper. Doesn't look like either of them are crossing their fingers. A few minutes later, The girls and Mrs. Walker set off down the lane towards the farm. Buttons, the Walker's dog, trotted happily alongside them, sniffing at interesting smells in the hedgerow. There's Buttons. He loves coming to the farm, Rachel told Kirsty, patting Buttons. He knows the Johnson's sheepdog, Cloud, since they were both pups, and the two of them go crazy whenever they see each other. Don't you, boy? Woof! Barked Buttons, as if he was agreeing with her. As the girl strolled along, something caught Kirsty's eye. Look at those, she said, pointing to some red and white toadstools under the tree. They're exactly like the fairyland toadstool houses, aren't they? Rachel nodded. Oh, I do hope we meet another fairy today, Kirsty said. Kirsty crunched happily through the fallen leaves. You know what Quintitania always says, she whispered, as Mrs. Walker bent down and let Buttons off his lead. Don't go looking for magic. They'll find you, Rachel finished. Kirsty linked her arm through Rachel's. It's hard not to look, though, she confessed. I keep wondering where we're going to meet our next fairy and who it's going to be. Here we are, Mrs. Walker said, as they turned off the lane into a long driveway. An old stone farmhouse stood at the end of the drive, with a pretty thatched roof and wood smoke curling from the chimney. A smiling woman opened the front door. Hello, she called warmly. Come in, all of you. Oh, Buttons, too. Cloud will be pleased. This is my friend Kirsty. She's staying with us, Rachel said. And Kirsty, this is Mrs. Johnson. Hello, Kirsty said, returning Mrs. Johnson's smile. Nice to meet you, Kirsty, Miss Johnson said, leading the way into the sunny farmhouse kitchen. I've just picked the last plums in my plum tree. Would anyone like one? Yes, please, the girls chorused. A volley of barking greeted them as they went in, and Cloud, a black and white sheepdog, danced around their legs. Buttons romped joyfully after him, barking just as noisily. Shall we take the dogs out for a walk? Rachel offered quickly, as Buttons' tail almost knocked over a basket of eggs. Oh no. Good idea, Miss Johnson replied, giving the girls a handful of plums each. Oh, she added, as they were about to head out the door. I should warn you that Mr. Johnson is rather a bad mood. His new green tractor has disappeared, and he thinks one of the farm lads has taken it for a ride. She winked at the girls. So if you see him and he's a bit grumpy, just ignore him, won't you? The girls nodded and followed Buttons and Cloud out of the door and into the meadows. Suddenly, Cloud trotted back over the girls, looking very pleased with himself. He dropped something at their feet. What's this? Kirsty asked, bending to pick it up. Oh, look, Rachel, she said. It's a tiny toy tractor, she giggled. Do you think we should give it to Mr. Johnson and make up for the one he lost? Rachel grinned. I don't think he would appreciate it, she replied. We'd better leave it here in case somebody comes back for it. Kirsty put the tractor down on a flat bit of grass where it was easy to spot. As she straightened up, she noticed something odd-looking. Shiny stones. Are those rocks over there? She asked in a puzzled voice. Rachel turned and looked where her friend was pointing. She saw several large brown objects under a chestnut tree, on one side of the meadow. That's strange, she said, frowning. I've never noticed them before. Let's go and have a closer look. Rachel and Kirsty ran across to the tree. The brown objects Kirsty spotted were roughly the size of a shape of footballs, and they were a glossy chocolate brown colour. Well, they're not rocks, Kirsty said, stroking one of them. It feels cool and smooth under her palm. They look more like giant chestnuts. Rachel patted one curiously. They do look like chestnuts, she agreed, but whoever heard of chestnuts this size? Before Kirsty could reply, Buttons bounded over, yapping excitedly. Then he ran back to a patch of grass a few meters away, sniffed it eagerly, and barked again. Rachel went to see what he found. Kirsty, quick, she called, her eyes wide. Come and look at these sheep. Sheep? Echoed Kirsty, incredulously, running over to join Rachel. She couldn't see any sheep yet. She got nearer to her best friend. She heard a tiny but distant baa. Rachel pointed down at the grass, and Kirsty's gaze followed her finger. Tiny sheep! Kirsty gasped in surprise. Oh my goodness, are they real? Down at her feet was a flock of the tiniest sheep Kirsty and Rachel had ever seen. Sheep the size of mice, chestnuts the size of footballs, whatever was going on. You know what? They're actually really, really cute. Seeing red. Whee! Squealed the fairy breathlessly. Hello, girls. Kirsty and Rachel laughed in delight as the golden leaf sailed down to the ground. The fairy promptly jumped off and twirled up in the air, her wings beating so quickly they were a blur of glittering colours. She had curly dark brown hair, and she wore a scarlet dress decorated with a pretty flower where the hemline rose at the front. She also wore little glittering red shoes which twinkled in the sunlight. And yet, that's exactly what her outfit looks like, and her hair. So cute. It's Scarlett the Garnet Fairy, Rachel declared, recognizing her instantly. Hello, Scarlett. Of course, Kirsty said, clapping her hands as she remembered something King Oberon had told them. The garnet controls growing and shrinking magic, doesn't it? She exclaimed. That's why the chestnuts are so enormous and the sheep are so tiny, Rachel added with a smile. Exactly, Scarlett said. She waved her wand hopefully, but only a few red sparkles scattered from it. Kirsty watched as they fizzed and spluttered out in the grass, and unfortunately, without it, I don't have enough magic to turn things back to their proper size. Scarlett explained sadly. We must find the garnet before it changes anything else. She flew over to perch on Kirsty's shoulder. India told me that you had a run-in with Jack Frost's goblins yesterday, she said, shivering at the thought. Let's try and find the garnet before any goblins get here. We'll start right away, Rachel said immediately, and Kirsty nodded. Great, Scarlett replied with a smile. I'll try the vegetable patch over there. And we'll search this field, Kirsty said. Come on, Rachel. The girls set off across the meadow, scanning the grass for any sign of the garnet. They were just passing a haystack when something very strange happened. My legs are tingling, Kirsty gasped. We're shrinking, Rachel cried as she saw the ground rushing towards her. Oh no, they're shrinking! The girls had often been fairy size before, but they'd always had pretty wings to fly onto. But not this time. Suddenly, the haystack seemed like a mountain in front of them, and the grass was waist high. The garnet must be very close if the magic is working on us. Now, Kirsty pointed out. Scarlett! Hey, Scarlett! Rachel shouted, trying to attract the attention of the Garnet Fairy, but her voice shrunk too. Scarlett didn't hear her tiny call. Rachel looked at the top of the haystack. Kirsty, Rachel, look at the top of the haystack, Kirsty cried, pointing upward. It's glowing red. Rachel looked up at once. Sure enough, something at the top of the haystack did seem to be shining, a deep red colour. It must be the garnet, she declared. Let's climb up and get it for Scarlett. Good idea, Kirsty agreed. There it is. And there's Rachel and Kirsty. The two girls had begun to climb the haystack. It was very hard work because the hay was sharp and slippery, and it was difficult to get a firm grip on the smooth stalks. But little by little, the girls drew closer to the magic garnet. Just as Kirsty was about to reach the top, the stalk she was holding on suddenly swayed and bent. Kirsty longed for something else to grab and clutched at another stalk, but it promptly snapped in two. Help! Cried Kirsty despairingly, trying to hang on. I'm falling! Scary surprise. Here! Rachel yelled, leaning down to reach Kirsty. Grab my hand! Kirsty clung onto her friend's outstretched fingers, her heart pounding as her feet scrambled for a safe foothold. Thanks, she said shakily as her feet found a strong straw, and Rachel helped to pull her upwards. The girls clambered gingerly up the last few steps, and Rachel gave a triumph cry. We found it! She cheered, for there in front of them lay the glittering red garnet. The sun shone through it, casting a rich rosy light across the hay. Wow, breathed Kirsty. It seems even more impressive. Now the girls were fairy-sized. The jewel was no bigger than a hen's egg, but right now that was almost as tall as Rachel and Kirsty. Scarlett! Both girls shouted. They waved their arms around at the top of the haystack, hoping the fairy would see or hear them. But Scarlett was still searching hard in the vegetable patch, completely unaware that her jewel had been found. Hopefully Scarlett will notice them. Then Kirsty had a good idea. What if we turn the garnet round so the red light shines across? To Scarlett, she suggested. Not sure to get her attention. Brilliant, Rachel agreed. I bet it's heavy, though. I think we'll have to lift it together. Kirsty took one hold of one side of the jewel and Rachel held the other. Then Kirsty counted 1, 2, 3. And together the girls heaved the gemstone around so that its rosy light was shining directly at Scarlett. The little fairy turned at once, and when she saw the girls with the garnet, her face lit up. Yippee! She cried, leaping into the air and twirling for joy. Well done, Kirsty and Rachel. Well done. Kirsty and Rachel both took a hand off the garnet to wave at her. As they did so, the magic stone slipped slightly, and its sparkling red light danced further along the vegetable patch, flickering over a scarecrow that stood nearby. Oh, I remember. I think the scarecrow's a goblin. And then, to the girls' great surprise, the scarecrow moved. Rachel and Kirsty stared in amazement as the scarecrow jumped down from its wooden stand and started lumbering its way toward the haystack. What's happening? Rachel asked. Is it more fairy magic, do you think? I don't know, Kirsty replied doubtfully. I didn't think the garnet could do that. She watched the scarecrow walking jerkily towards them and suddenly felt nervous. It's coming over here. What do you think it wants? Rachel narrowed her eyes and stared hard at the scarecrow. Hang on a minute, she said. Look at its green pointy nose. That's not a scarecrow. It's a goblin! Oh no! Kirsty cried, clutching Rachel in fright. Look how enormous it is! big as a man, Rachel said anxiously, biting her lip. All of a sudden, she felt smaller than ever. How would she and Kirsty protect the garnet when they were so tiny and the goblin was so huge? Oh, do be quick, Scarlett. Come and get the garnet, she yelled frantically. Scarlett was flying over as fast as she could, a determined look on her face. I'm coming, she cried. Hang on, girls. Kirsty gulped, still holding on to Rachel. Look, she said, pointing at the scarecrow. For it had stopped walking and was now pulling off its long coat. And underneath the coat, there wasn't just one goblin, there were two, one standing on the other shoulder. The top goblin jumped down, and as Rachel and Kirsty watched in horror, both goblins started running as fast as they could towards the garnet and the girls. Oh no. Kidnapped. Let's get out of here, Kirsty cried fearfully. As quickly as they could, she and Rachel began to clamber back down the haystack, carrying the garnet between them. The jewel felt strangely warm as they held it. My fingers are tingling, Rachel called out. Do you think that means... But Rachel's words were cut off because the garnet's magic was working again. And this time, both girls were growing. They clutched tightly onto the jewel as their legs lengthened and their heads shortened up towards the sky. Suddenly, the haystack, which seemed such a mountain to climb, was nothing more than a regular haystack, and it couldn't hold the weight of the two girls. I'm sinking! I'm sinking! Rachel panted as her feet sunk in the hay. We're too heavy for the haystack now. Thank you so much for watching and listening to me read Scarlett the Garnet Fairy. I hope you enjoyed today's video. The next fairy I'll be reading is Emily the Emerald Fairy. This fairy right here. Bye!